I'd like to welcome our guests this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you're coming in from. My name is Chris Moore. I'm the CEO with ZeroedIn People Analytics. I've started the company about 20 years ago to help solve some of the universal shortcomings that we saw in HR, learning, talent, in providing better insights to leaders and stakeholders. And I'm joined by Carrie Trost from Avangrid, who is one of our esteemed clients and colleagues. Carrie, would you like to introduce yourself? You're on mute.
Everyone, very excited to be here and looking forward to talking to you. As Chris said, I'm currently at Avangrid, Director of Strategic Initiatives in the Total Rewards organization, but I've been in a number of business roles in the past as well as HR roles, working around process design, strategy, continuous improvement, but a lot of time spent in the space of HR analytics and metrics. So very excited to share what we've been doing at Avangrid with you, but also very excited to hear when we get to the Q&A what a lot of you out there are doing and encountering in this space. Thank you.
Great, excellent. So let's do a quick review of some of the learning objectives here. So really going to start with some of the key questions that you'll want to ask yourselves as you begin kind of peeling back the onion and identifying, do we need a better solution than what we're doing today? We're going to talk a little bit about getting to the complete picture, right? Is your HR system enough, or do you need more than what that might be offering? And should you build it yourself, or should you look for a partner? We're going to talk about allowing you to compare, how do you compare apples to apples, right? There's a lot of different solutions out there. You have options. They may be internal options, they may be external. So, how do you go about evaluating those? And then what can you expect from a people analytics solutions? What are some of the key areas where it can really provide value for the organization? And then we'll wrap that up with some talks about how you might start building a business case if you determine that the people analytics solution or a new solution, regardless of what path you choose, is the right choice for your organization. All right. So you're having some struggles, I'm imagining, with getting good insights into the hands of your people managers or people who need it. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be joining us today. Or maybe you're bogged down with ad hoc report requests coming in on a daily basis while you're still trying to develop some type of standard and consistent way of satisfying those requests. So we'd like to frame a couple ways of approaching that. One question you want to be asking yourself is, what are our challenges, right? So you really have to identify what's happening, what's your current state, and what's preventing you from really advancing you to the perhaps to the next level that you're trying to get to. And then around that, what are the basic needs? Are there particular reports you're trying to produce? Are you trying to build trust in your data with better data integrity? Do you need to formulate consistent metrics and insights? Do you need to collect data from multiple disparate systems? All of the above. So these are some of the questions you need to be thinking about. And then in terms of scope, while we're on that topic of disparate data sources, are you looking for a single point solution? Are you just focused on maybe talent acquisition, or maybe just focused on turnover or diversity and inclusion? Or are you looking for, a broader, maybe end-to-end workforce lifecycle solution and all points in between that can help you make better decisions and provide those insights? And then, lastly, as you begin to, question, how do we get to the next level? Should we look at other options? You need to think about who's the target audience, who needs the solution that you're currently providing. Who are you currently serving? Is it just your HR analysts? Is it your HR leaders, your HR business partners, your executives, your people managers? Because that target audience, we find ultimately, really drives, some of those solutions that you might need to start looking at. If it's just your HR analysts, they're pretty technical in nature, and they may be able to get by with, some of the internal tools that you're currently using, and we'll discuss some of those. But if it's your people managers and your executives and maybe your HR business partners, they may not be as technical. So you're going to need perhaps a solution that is maybe more easy to use, maybe more understandable. And so those are some things that we find in terms of the questions that you really want to start asking yourselves. So, Carrie, would you walk our guests here through the situation that you were facing at Avangrid when you began looking at solutions to help the organization?
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. So just to provide a little context of Avangrid and what I came into, I started about 18 months ago with the organization, and Avangrid is a utility energy company located, corporate is here in Orange, Connecticut. And some of the complexity we have is it's part of a Spanish company, has ownership of about 6 companies, Avangrid being one of them. But we're owned from Spain, so there's some complexity in that, in what we have to provide to our parent company. In Avangrid, though, we've brought together about 8 companies over quite a number of years. Our primary business is our networks or utilities company. So if anybody goes outside or you drive down the road, you'll see the lines and poles out there. We provide electricity to many customers, as well as gas underground to many of our customers. So those are the 2 main sources. And we have about 75 employees within our organization and growing. And then the other half of our organization is small, but continuously growing by leaps and bounds, is our renewable space. So that would be wind, solar, hydro, and mainly our company is focused right now on onshore wind, but a big part that's coming and growing significantly is our offshore wind organization. So a little complex organization between our traditional utilities, which has its unions, has a number of bargaining agreements, and is a large part of our organization, and the up and coming almost startup piece of it, which is the renewable space. So just to add that context of all the different complexities in our organization and all the different key constituents we may have. So I love this chart. It was my pain point coming into the organization. As Chris had mentioned, I really need to understand what was our current state. And there were about 3 people dedicated to our people analytics team at that time when I came on board. And some of the things outlined here had already been put in place by the time I arrived. But this helped me to kind of sort out and understand where we were. So if you look at the left-hand side, our data sources, we had primarily 2 main data platforms for our people data, one being SAP, which held our people data. We also used SAP in the business for finance and our payroll systems. And then we also had SuccessFactors as our second platform, which contained our talent management system, or I'm sorry, our talent acquisition platform. And having that team, what it required is a lot of downloading of data and reports from these systems anytime we needed to provide weekly or monthly headcount reports, turnover reports, and ultimately a monthly dashboard that we would provide internal and to some of the business leaders across the businesses. So what happened, it was a downloading of data, but as you can imagine, there was a lot of retroactivity, which all of you may encounter when you download the people data and some things aren't input into the system in a timely manner. There were multiple records that we would get through these downloads, and we have to have an analyst go in and actually do the data validation, deleting a lot of the duplicate records, looking at the data to see if there were inconsistencies, sort of this cleaning process that needed to occur. And that took probably about 4 to 6 hours every Monday morning for our analysts to do this. In addition to the data we got off of the two platforms, there was a lot of data that we retained in spreadsheets. So talent data, going back and adding historical files of data, performance or some of the compensation data. So that had to be merged together with the downloads, and again, through spreadsheets. So there was a lot of pivot tables, VLOOKUPs, things to just get one complete data set in the organization. At that time, we also had Alteryx, which was providing some automation to us. So once we had one data set, we utilized Alteryx to automate some of the feeds, clean the data a little bit more, which then would pump out either the reports that we needed, or we leveraged a BI tool, which was Power BI, to create a dashboard. The complexities were enormous, though, when you look at this. One, as I had mentioned, the downloading of reports, the merging of spreadsheets because of all the disparate data systems and files we had out there. Alteryx, although it was providing some automation, the individual that we had as our resident expert in Alteryx didn't have a lot of knowledge in Alteryx. So if we had a problem pumping out of Alteryx, it was difficult to find the root cause of what was going on. And my analyst that understood all of our historical files was amazing, but didn't have a lot of knowledge in Alteryx to understand what could be the problem running through the automation. If I then move to the dashboards and Power BI, what I'll also mention is going to Alteryx and Power BI at the time it was made prior to me coming on board, it was not being supported by our internal IT organization. So anytime we needed user licenses, if we had any technology issues with either of those products, we could not rely internally on IT to provide us with help, but we had to rely on consultants and external support for any answers to our concerns. Speaking about Power BI as well, it was a very powerful tool, but our end users didn't have the capability nor the capacity to really understand the power of Power BI. So as we were able to create reports and dashboards and try and distribute them through that tool, our end users weren't using them, and our CHRO refused to figure out how to use the tool. Understandably so, he didn't have the time or capacity to do that. So in the end, what we ended up doing is not being able to leverage that capability in what we had intended with the drill down capability and the downloading of data. But in the end, we actually just downloaded the dashboards onto a static PowerPoint deck and distributed that PowerPoint deck out to our end users, which gave them kind of the high level information they need, but didn't provide any of the technology and the capability to be able to, as I said, go in, drill down further or double click into that information, download into an Excel spreadsheet to do their own manual manipulation of the data to get some of the answers that they need. And in the problems of doing that and realizing the capability was not there, it added a tremendous amount of workload from an ad hoc request capacity to our upfront and our analysts, because when we pump out the PowerPoint static files, of course, a lot of questions would be asked. They wanted to drill down more, and the only way to do so was to request an ad hoc report from our team. So our ad hoc requests increased significantly. So although I'm sure initially the business case sounded great to utilize some of these tools, we did not internally have the capability to manage the tools. We did not have the user base capability to understand the tools and manage to the tools. And in the end, it actually only it created additional workload, and we didn't have the capacity to do so. So as you can see on the bottom, I summarized some of the good we had and were able to leverage. Unfortunately, there was also the bad and then the ugly of where we ended up in all of our efforts to try and do something internally. Chris, if you want to go to the next slide.
There are quite a bit of moving parts in this, and I imagine that many of our guests experience bits and pieces or all of this themselves, because what we find is that this is what organization like yours and others they're faced with. So let's ask our guests with a poll about, what are the challenges or struggles that you might be facing today. So let's, you should have a poll come up on the right-hand side if you'd like to answer it. Is it about data integrity? Is it, HR data is dirty by nature, right? A lot of manually entered data. And that data is entered in multiple places. It starts in applicant tracking, sometimes it flows through, sometimes it's re-entered in the HR system. So there's multiple places to pull that disparate data from. And then as you mentioned, building the dashboards, whether it's Power BI or Tableau or Excel or PowerPoint, there's an interest in getting that out to users, and so, while all the ad hoc requests are still coming in, and I think you mentioned that, Carrie, right? That never stops. So we've got some results coming up here that looks like a large majority is at 26%, pretty well dispersed, but 26% in aggregating disparate data and then building dashboards. So that's interesting to see. So let's we'll go ahead and we'll advance on. Carrie, there were some gaps, and you began to look for. There's got to be. You faced the question, right? There's got to be a better way. So
yeah.
Why don't you continue on that path and share with us what you found?
Yep. So after assessing our current state and where we are and what we had built to date, what was successful, what was kind of broken and not working for us, these are the gaps that we came. And I mentioned some of them, but really it was our current dashboard did not provide our HR organization nor our business users with access to the data when and how they needed it. So again, as I mentioned, significant number of ad hoc requests, and it really seemed like we were just more of a manufacturing shop and not having the capacity to really add that next layer of value of insights and helping the businesses make more informed decisions. The no single repository existing for data management and having a single source access. So all these disparate data, Excel files going around, which concern the hell out of me because all I could think of is the inability for errors. As you're merging data sets together and it's all manual effort, the ability for errors to come through. And then that single point of data. I wanted one version of the truth, but when you're sending out Excel spreadsheets to everybody on a weekly, monthly basis, people are manipulating it. There's different numbers popping up. People are going off and in presentations coming out with data. And next thing I know, I have different data being, why is the head count showing this on one report and this on another report? Because there is not one version of the truth for everybody to access and use across the organization. Significant manual effort was required to make the data accurate, clean, and complete. And even with all that effort, in the end, we still had gaps existing. And one of the other things I'll mention is if you don't get the data out to your users and people using the data who are frontline and familiar with the data, you don't know how accurate your data really is. So it was a question of really getting that data out there and really uncovering how valid and accurate our data is. Managing the multiple current demands was just bogging down our organization, from reports to dashboards and significant ad hoc requests coming in, which, as I said, left no capacity for any of us to add that layer of value add and insights to the organization. We also had, when I came on board, capability gaps within our current analytics team. It was kind of built from people that have been there for a long time, or we hired a finance person to come in but didn't really know HR data and the complexities of people data, so was just looking at it from a financial lens. So we didn't have some of the abilities in our own team to do what we wanted to do, let alone our user capabilities. When you get out to the HR VPs and some other areas in HR, they're not as proficient in Excel and can't manipulate the data and do pivot tables and VLOOKUPs, which was another issue we had in rolling out what we wanted to do. And like I said, the data automation and dashboard tools that we chose for some reason, and I'm not sure why we necessarily did it, but they weren't supported by our IT organization, which became problematic. So if you look on the right side, I found that there were three options. One, we could ask our IT organization to build it internally for us. However, our problem internally is in 2021, when we made this decision in the beginning of the year, the demand plan for IT had already been set. So they were going to squeeze us in as they had some capacity, which made me concerned we weren't going to get a lot of priority or focus out of it. And it was looking as a 9 to 12 month effort, if not more, to create something. And that would just be a baseline of what we needed. Another option, number two, is we could build it internally. Because we're an international company, Scottish Power that we owned did this and actually brought on 12 FTE. They had an IT programmer, they had some data scientists, and they did an internal build. I don't like trying to bring as many people in FTE and managing that kind of build. I'll also say, because now we're in the throes of moving to Workday, the issue stood that now Scottish Power has to figure out, they built a whole Oracle infrastructure, and now they have to kind of redo everything based on our Workday transition. So in the end, they're going to have a significant amount of difficulty figuring out how they transition what they built to our new Workday platform. And that was looking at a 12+ month effort to build out internally in a team. And so the last was outsourcing. To me, it was cost effective. It would leverage the expertise that is already out there from a vendor, and I didn't have to think about how we build it internally. And it was about a 3 to 4 month effort to transition the data over, put it in one data repository in a cloud, a data lake, data warehouse, whatever we want to call it. But leverage the capability and the expertise that's already been created instead of building it internally. And as you look here, these were the three options, looking at it from a cost-benefit analysis and the benefits and concerns. Internally, yes, and internally building it in the team, we could own and control our data and our dashboard capability. Internal costs from an IT perspective already existed, but not sure if we would get full support from IT and the capacity to do it. And that was a concern. Competing demands. Once it's built, is it going to be just a static dashboard, or would IT have the capacity to continue to support us as we want to build it out? Would require expertise, of course, to build our dashboards, and again, the length of time. Internally, as I mentioned, it had some benefits. We could provide quicker response to our users. We would have to hire a data scientist and have the internal capabilities internally. But as I said, as our systems or platforms change, such as Workday, which we're currently undergoing right now, our infrastructure would need to be remodified to support that. Bringing on the additional FTE concerned me, and having to retain that FTE to a certain level to be able to keep what we built. And lastly, on the right-hand side, vendor solution, and we did evaluate 5 vendors looking at the benefits would be, as I said, leveraging expertise, and they would also continuously build out the platform that they had in place. So we could leverage the continuous build out and improvements over time. Then we could spend our time enhancing the data, cleaning up our data, shoring up our data, et cetera. Some of the concerns around that, though, were being dependent on a vendor for storing our data, and the analytics platform and capability would be vendor-owned. And we would be dependent upon a vendor for support, which I'll get into in our evaluation of our vendors when I go there.
Awesome, thanks.
So those were the 3 options we had at
yeah, that's great. When we work with clients like yourselves, we see similar options. In addition to the ones you laid out, which are kind of on that right side, do-it-yourself, BI data, and the one below, a people analytics platform. There's, everybody starts with what do we have in our HR system, right? And of course, the title of our presentation today is, when is good enough not enough? And it seems kind of clear that from your situation and the path that you began going down with that current situation that you shared, that SAP itself didn't have everything you need, to get the information that the business was asking for. And we find that a lot, particularly in organizations that have a disparate HR ecosystem, right? You may be running different applicant tracking, different comp systems, different payroll, different core HR, different learning, different recognition. So different survey platforms for sentiment and engagement. So that integrated HR system is certainly where people look first, but even as you noted, Terry, you're on a migration from SAP to Workday, and you clearly had some feelings that you might not get analytics right away from Workday either, right?
Correct.
Yeah. From the timing perspective and priorities, I presume, and
yeah, and also our complexity, as I mentioned, we're a global company, so a lot of the requirements and what's going to be dictated in Workday is going to be controlled by our parent company. So we don't have a lot of say in what we will get. So I wanted to make sure that we had a platform that we could control. We could control the data. We can control the reporting that we wanted locally. Because we're very unsure of what we're going to get in the end from Workday, given that a lot of the requirements are being dictated by our global parent company.
Yeah. And we also find on the HR side, it's, while some of the capabilities are there, whether it's built-in reports, there's some dashboarding, maybe more advanced tools like the newer HR platforms have, that the data is isolated just within the one system. So if you're looking to integrate third-party data, benchmarks, labor data, that it proves difficult, and the tools are not always advanced enough to allow you to compare, contrast, and discover. There's a little more of a static environment. So on that right side, the do-it-yourself, this is really where all of our clients start. And you were there as well. It's with Excel, with Tableau, Power BI, or a tool like that, attempting to build the dashboards and reports yourselves. The challenge here is that HR data, as I mentioned before, it's dirty by nature. There's lots of time spent collecting it, cleaning it, formatting it. And those tools, the Power BIs and Tableaus of the world don't do that for you. Alteryx, yes, you can build, it's a extract, transformation tool, so you can begin to start automate the data cleanup there, but you have to do all that tedious work yourself and maintain it. And of course, where we live at ZeroedIn and other solutions, there's people analytics vendors that have built solutions to really clean your data for you, curate it into insights, and get those insights into the hands of your users without requiring you, the client, to do all that tedious work. And there's basic solutions in that set with maybe limited metrics and insights around maybe headcount and turnover and hiring. And then there's the broader, more advanced solutions that can incorporate not just your core HR data, but business and operational data as well, which really begin to provide that complete picture of the workforce. So we're going to look at some of those capabilities of the people analytics platforms in a little more detail. But before we do, we want to ask ourselves kind of one of those questions again about scope. Are we looking to solve a particular problem for HR, like talent acquisition or recruiting, where we just need a single lens? Does the scope of your solution need to span HR and really look at that broader workforce life cycle of hire to retire, and in onboarding, hiring, development, compensation, rewards and recognition, and ultimately, retention or separation at the end of the day? And then what impact on the business itself, with regard to HR, sales, safety, production, distribution? These are all important questions to ask as you begin looking at solutions. All right, so from a solution standpoint, there's some key features that we commonly look at, we help our clients evaluate. So one of the pieces is really automating this data pipeline. Carrie shared their challenges and what they were facing. pulling the data from SAP, SuccessFactors, multiple Excel spreadsheets. You know, this is where many of our clients spend a lot of their time, and find that while they spend their time there, it doesn't allow them to get to the actual, to the insights and the facts in helping the business with that information, because they're stuck building the data pipeline. And they build that data pipeline in order to curate insights, right? And these are metrics and facts that all of you are familiar with. It's headcount, it's tenure, it's average pay rate, it's days between pay changes, it's the movements, the promotions, demotions, the laterals. So it's quantifying these facts and all of the characteristics. Think about this concept of an analytics cube that contains these facts and insights over periods of time, over the organizational hierarchy, over the employee demographics, the employer demographics, and being able to quickly use those insights to deliver them through dashboards. So, this concept of providing turnkey dashboards is important, but also being able to create your own dashboards and target select insights for different groups. Perhaps your executive team needs a broader set of metrics than, say, a hiring manager might need. So being able to target them and distribute them in a meaningful way. And it doesn't end there, because data is sometimes like a drug, right? It's people want more, and they want to be able to discover, look at trends and look at comparisons, because this really begins to tell the story of not just what is happening and where it's happening, but why it's happening. And you'll need easy to understand visualizations. Bar charts, pie charts are easy to understand, and they're powerful. Are they enough? Sometimes, heat maps and other types of relationship diagrams are good, but it all depends on what you're trying to convey. Tools like the Tableaus and the Power BIs, they're good at this. They have lots of powerful visualizations, but they also bring in a level of complexity that might be difficult for end users to navigate and leverage. Also, there's a concept of personalization, right? One size does not always fit all. So what's important to one may not be important to another. So being able to personalize and extend and really kind of save, just like you do in a browser. If you go to a website and you want to save it as a favorite and recall it, you want to be able to do that quickly within your people analytics as well. And, let's not leave out reporting. We talk analytics, but, one of the most important needs of the organization is in the reporting side. So there'll be turnkey reports in your solutions, but you'll also want to create custom reports, ad hoc reports. You'll want to schedule those reports so that they can run automatically at point in time, maybe end of the month, maybe a few days after, and then distribute those to the right people in a secure way, which leads to data security and data privacy. So you need to make sure that your users have the information they need, and only the information they need based on their particular role, based on where they sit within the organization. And developing the security model and the data privacy model is difficult to do when you're trying to build a solution yourself. And it's even harder to get to the more advanced side of predictive modeling and data science when you're struggling building the data pipeline. So this is where partners can come in and help you advance your initiatives to not just see what's happening today, but to be able to get to this concept of, yes, predictive analytics, but prescriptive analytics as well, and leverage the data science discipline such that your analytics solution is alerting you, so to speak, as to what the system and what the models are seeing in the data, not just necessarily what you have to see through your own discovery. And that's the power that technology today can bring organizations. So, Carrie, you identified a number of those, some important features and capabilities that Avangrid needs. Share how you went about evaluating, comparing those across the various options you shared earlier?
Mm-hmm. So in our requirements or the dimensions we started to look at of what we wanted in a platform as well as an analytics tool, we looked at a couple things. Of course, the data repository, what did the platform and model look like, reporting capability, the visualization and the analytics that it provided, what insights or AI capability was there with the vendor, and did we have access to somebody that would help us further build out what we wanted to do? So it wasn't just leveraging what was currently on their platform, but could we also do some customization to meet our specific needs? Ability to distribute our reports in a timely manner to users, could we schedule them, et cetera. Security, of course, is important, and I believe most of the vendors have tight security around their offerings. Very important to us was the support provided. So as we went through our vendor solutions, we wanted a company that just wasn't going to sell us the ability to have a data repository analytics platform, but almost seemed too big that we weren't going to get the support we needed. We know our data is very difficult. As I said, we've had a number of organizations merge together and we've got spreadsheets, and it's a lot to take on. It's a lot to clean. It's a lot to organize. And we wanted to make sure our vendor was going to be a partner with us in creating that data repository and working with us through all of the messiness of trying to build out our data platform. Price, of course, is always an issue and something to think about. So we looked at that, and as you can see, we went across. We wanted to assess what would it look like if we continued with our current, what we had in place currently with Power BI and Alteryx. What if we asked IT to do the build? What would that look like? What if we built out our analytics team to do it? And we looked at the vendors, and you can see at the bottom that the vendors that we looked at, Domo, Visier, ZeroedIn, SuccessFactors, Click, and Splash. And as we went through each of the requirements or dimensions on the left-hand side, we either gave each of these solutions or vendors a check mark, which was they were going to, would provide us with kind of current capability. We gave them a plus if they were going to increase our capability of what we wanted, or a minus if they didn't have this capability or it didn't exist. And as you can see here, and it's going to be very hard for anybody to read this, but I thought this would be helpful. So the requirements are on the left-hand side, and you can see the specifics of how we defined our requirements for that. So for example, I'll pull out the data analytics, visualization, and dashboard dimension or requirement that we looked at. We wanted dashboards and exploration of data through manipulation, being able to click on something and it would refresh the data according to what we clicked on, so we can get down to lower levels and drill downs within the organization, and everything would change accordingly. We wanted visualization that could be delivered to end users that would be compelling and easily understood and be able to use them as presentations to the businesses or the decision makers. So graphics and charts that were easy to understand, easy to use, and provided a story. Ease of use for our users to know what content is available on the platform, and a lot of great user capabilities. Automation or machine learning to augment our analytics for more sophisticated analytics, such as workforce planning, retirement forecasting, being able to identify high-risk leavers within the organization. And also a robust suite of analytics for predefined. So why would we build it if somebody has also already defined it on their platform, and what can we leverage from a predefined analytics offering? So that's just one of the dimensions, but when you get the deck, you can actually see some of the other dimensions broken out more finely of what we looked at. And this looks at kind of where we'd like to go, and it's quite aspirational, but it looks at where we'd like to go on the continuum. And you can see on the bottom, on the x-axis is the degree of HR intelligence that we'd like to build out, and the value add that it would provide to our users. And it looks across kind of 4 areas that we aspire to move through as we build out our capability. I think we're pretty good at today at descriptive analytics. We can tell people what happened. So if you want to know what happened yesterday, if you want to know what happened last week or last month, we can do that. We can provide standard reports, ad hoc reporting, historical trends. But it doesn't tell us anything or inform us much except for what happened yesterday. We'd like to get into understanding not only what happened, but why did it happen? And have users go in and self-service capability and the ability, as I said, to drill down into lower levels of why something may have been occurring within the organization from a root cause analysis perspective. We'd also like to add benchmarks capability, because it doesn't help if we know what we're looking at today or in our own little worlds, but how do we benchmark how we're doing internally as well as with external benchmarks to understand where we stand. And alerts. Can users put an alert on? So if something increases or decreases, say 5%, it would automatically alert them to that fact. And then they can go in and start doing root cause as to what's going on. Moving up the continuum, predictive analytics. Hopefully we'll get to a point of what could happen, looking at that forecasting capability, especially as we have in our utilities organization a huge population that's going to be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. And we'd like to be able to forecast retirements to start to assess who may be leaving. And also from a retention perspective, can we understand who are going to be flight risks within the organization, especially given today's current talent market? And lastly, moving up the chain, getting into that, not only what could or will happen, can we make certain things happen? So if we understand what's happening in our organization, what are the levers we could start to move so we can actually predict what could happen and see if we can start being proactive in making certain changes in the organization happen, so we can maybe reduce retention or understand retirement and get ahead of it so we can have knowledge transfer and we could provide the capabilities we need for our future state organization.
It would seem from the scorecard that you shared, obviously looking at, do we stay the course? Does IT build? Does HR build more? Do we go to look at vendor solutions? That the vendor solutions, I imagine, would help you accelerate your move through this continuum more quickly. Have you found?
Yeah, exactly. And 2 things. We're pretty much in the green space right now, and as I had said, our ad hoc reporting is probably 75% of what we do. We're just inundated with the ad hoc reporting, and we need to get out from under that. So that's what it would provide us, as well as moving forward into really some of the higher level capabilities of predictive. And I think everybody can attest to, in today's talent market, it's very difficult to find some of the IT capabilities if we were trying to bring them in-house, like a data scientist or a big data person. It's very hard to get them off in the market. It's very difficult also to retain them. And it was much easier for us to leverage what was already out there with a vendor solution.
Right. So I'm happy to say and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you selected ZeroedIn. And,
yes, we did.
Yes, and you did that in November.
We did that in November. So our path forward around our assessment process, we, as you said, as you looked at, we brought in about 5 different vendors. Some are big players in the market, and we realized that we didn't feel comfortable that was where we are currently in our journey to take advantage of some of what they were providing. As I mentioned, we also wanted to feel that we had somebody that was going to kind of be a partner with us and support us. Our data is very, very messy, and we wanted to know that somebody would be there, not after the sales phase or the initial transition of data, but somebody that was truly going to work hand in hand with us to understand the complexity of our data, all of the retroactivity and the nuances of our data, and would be there to really help us build out that data repository that we needed and that foundation to move forward. Also, what we liked about ZeroedIn and Chris's organization is a data scientist is there to provide us with support. So some of the other companies, I was concerned we may have to find that as an internal person to help us move up this continuum. But I was happy with ZeroedIn that we have access to a data scientist. It's almost like being a part-time person on the team to help us figure out how we move up this continuum to more of that prescriptive analytics capability in our future.
Right, and as we go up that continuum, with your efforts add more value to the organization, which leads to the outcomes and the results that you can expect to influence through your people analytics efforts. So, as we look at some of those at a high level, time savings, your analyst spent an exorbitant amount of time each month, cleaning and formatting Excel spreadsheets. So I'm sure they're beginning to see some relief on that from what we've started to deliver for you. And really to build that data integrity and trust, to have that single point of reference becomes ultimately very valuable, because if your users don't trust the data, they won't use the data. Mm-hmm. And it won't give them a consistent way of looking at some of the business drivers, whether that's retention and turnover, whether it's pay equity, absenteeism, or visibility into skilling and bench strengths and weaknesses. And so these are just very high level, some of the business drivers and influencers that Better People Insights will not just help you understand where these areas are occurring or are needed, but why. So Josh Burson, in his HR predictions for 2022, published that 83% of organizations aren't using advanced people analytics. But for those that do, actually realize these multiples on the right over their peers who don't. So these are pretty significant multiples, and they're compelling reasons to really look closer at where you are on your people analytics continuum, and the value that you can derive from progressing up that level, as Carrie shared with us. So, a quick story on the time saving piece. One of our clients, Dollar Tree and Family Dollar, shared in our last HR executive webinar in December, which you can actually go back and watch that on the HR executive channel. Steve Cherry, their VP of Total Rewards, also shared the time savings that they're realizing, which really results to a 40-to-1 reduction in at least one of their use cases, where they're pulling a quarterly diversity, equity, inclusion report. In their old practice, it took 40 hours. With ZeroedIn, it takes them less than 1 hour. So pretty significant time when you have a limited set of resources trying to accomplish many things at once. And so just wanted to share that. And what we'd like to do also is really take another poll. So now that you've learned about some of the options you have out there, what would your ideal people analytics solution be? And you can see on the right-hand side the poll that you can select from. So, would it be building and maintaining, a solution yourself using BI and data visualization tools, perhaps hiring a big five consultant or a boutique shop to build and maintain a custom solution, like Carrie's counterpart in Scotland did? Was it leveraging what's available in your HR system as much as possible, and good enough just is going to have to be enough? Or do you want to look at implementing a cloud people analytics solution that can grow and evolve with you? So, there's commonly some blockers that you'll have to face as you go through these choices. Maybe you're saying we don't have good data. Maybe you're saying IT wants us to follow the corporate BI standard, or we know there's a better way, but we don't know what the options are. We don't have the bandwidth to implement a new solution. Or maybe we lack the data science skills. These are all objections and blockers that can be overcome. There's some resources that we will make available to you at the end of the presentation that can really help you advance on the continuum. So yeah, happy to see that 53% of the group would consider a cloud people analytics solution that can grow and evolve with them. So as you begin to think about that, you're going to have to think about building a business case because solutions require resourcing. So when there's really 6 areas that we identify in building the business case, starting with the executive summary, really, having a succinct argument for, the critical business drivers, what are the possible solutions. So this really has to summarize for your audience just at a glance so that they understand the problem that you're facing. And then moving to the overarching issues, is, focusing on the business and the workforce drivers that are pushing you, to recommend a shift in technology, a shift in how you're going to, begin solving the problem that you're facing. Like Carrie did, you're going to want to really lay out the current state of your people analytics initiatives at your organization and identify where the barriers are and what's holding you back from delivering and moving up the continuum. And then proposing solutions, the build versus buy, leveraging HR, looking at third-party solutions, should we build it ourselves or should we partner? And then as you get towards the end of your business case, you have to think about, what are the problems you're going to solve that are going to help pay for the solution, right? So these are the outcomes and these levers that you're ultimately going to be able to pull to, reduce turnover by having better insight into turnover as to where it's happening, when it's happening, and why it's happening. Reducing absenteeism, reducing overtime, increasing engagement. So these are all the kind of the business drivers that will ultimately equate to the investments and the return on those investments that will help your organizations, achieve its business goals. Carrie, when you built, would you share a little bit about your business case and building that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we, of course, did a lot of our due diligence around identifying all the vendors, bringing them in, listening to what they could provide for us, and had our business case. What we were able to do is kind of fast track our procurement process. We did not involve procurement as we were able to put the business case together for sole sourcing, which means we did not have to have the vendors present to our procurement organization. We had made the decision on our own, the direction we wanted to go, and of course had to put the business case around it. But it came down to kind of the cost-benefit analysis of what we could get for the cost point. There were other vendors which had different value propositions, but were a significant higher cost to the organization. And like I said, given where we are in our journey, as well as where we wanted to go, it was a pretty easy sell. And I think it took about, what did we say, Chris, 9 months to go through the process. A lot of work on Chris's side and his team to try and provide all of the cybersecurity and some of the documents we needed. But it ended up being something the organization, there were so many pain points in the organization. I think it sold itself once we were able to provide that compelling business case of what it could provide for us and how quickly we could get to that higher level of capability, as well as saving time on the organization side, and not expending all of our energy just producing ad hoc reports, but able to get to that higher level of capability that our HRBPs and their CHRO have been thirsty for the past few years, and quite honestly, very frustrated because we can't seem to do it internally, no matter how we try.
I remember one of your VPs in one of our final meetings as they were getting down to the final decisions. Maybe you had down selected and in a meeting they mentioned. So you're telling me it's our mess for less, right?
It's our mess for less. Yeah.
And we were just saying, yeah, that's pretty much exactly what it is. But
Yeah.
so
I think his point was, Chris, can we just throw our crap over the wall and you can make sense of it, because just all the files, all the spreadsheets, all the downloads, can we just throw it over the wall?
It's what we do, right?
Yeah.
So as we wrap up here, we'd like to share a couple resources that are available to you. There's a QR code if you want to click on these, or we'll be sharing the deck with you through HR Executive. There's an on-demand demo that you can watch ZeroedIn. It's a 4 or 5 minute demo that just gives a high-level overview. Following that, if you'd like to talk in more detail, we'd love to talk about how we might help you with the struggles and however unique they are to you. We also have a resource, ebook called The Business Value in Helping You Build Your Business Case. Some of the materials we shared today are incorporated in that. We're actually just releasing a buyer's guide as well that will follow up with our guests once that's available. And then there's some additional resources, delivering people analytics and the top 9 people insights that you might find useful in your research as well. So at that point, we'd like to move to a Q&A in the final minutes. So we'll turn it back over to our facilitator to walk us through any of the Q&As.
Yeah, Chris, we got some great questions here. I'll start off with this one. With hiring and retention being difficult, are you seeing companies use a solution like ZeroedIn instead of hiring a dedicated people analytics resource?
We are, in this kind of, whether it's the Great Resignation or it's, the gig economy, it's difficult to hire, people analytics resources, much alone, other resources as well. And, we talk to clients regularly who have had open recs for 8 or 9 months. And as Carrie mentioned, with ZeroedIn, we have sort of a white glove service, if you will, with our people analytics concierge to really help you get more value and provide the data science discipline as part of the solution. It's really built into our model. Carrie,
yeah, absolutely. I see our IT department struggle to find IT resources around big data and data scientists. And I just knew it would take us probably 9-12 months to play in the external talent space to find somebody internally. And then the point is retaining that person once they get up to speed. So this was a better solution to leverage the external capability with ZeroedIn.
Mm-hmm. I see another question specifically about, for Avangrid.
Yeah. That question is, what were the top cases or problems you ultimately wanted to solve? For example, give executives dashboards, run performance reviews more seamlessly.
Mm-hmm. Well, the big foundational element was getting our data in one repository instead of downloading off of our 2 HR data system platforms and then merging spreadsheets together. That was the big heavy lift for us. The second is providing our HR business partners with data and insights to help them be more consultative with their businesses. I mean, we're having some retention hotspots in some areas and, trying to give them insights into what specifically is going on, what's the tenure, what are these people leaving look like, what can we do? And we just don't have that capability. So providing them with dashboards that are compelling, but also the insights that go with it to provide that next level of consulting for our business partners.
There is also a question about, at what employee size do you recommend bringing an HR analyst or analysts in on staff? You mentioned you worked at the Hartford prior to Avangrid, and was there a particular, point where you said, okay, we need another analyst, or
Yep, I can tell you in our journey where we'd like to go. There's 3 levels of what I'm trying to build out, and I think it's going to be about a total of 5 FTE in the end where we end up. One is I'd like somebody that can manage the data and do the ad hoc reporting at that lower level, so I can take that analyst that I've had doing that, who has so much greater capability, one from a business continuity perspective, so if he leaves, but also to leverage him a little differently in that medium space, which is going to be working with the platform, getting those dashboards, getting them out to the end users, and providing compelling stories. And then I'm going to also add a kind of business, somebody that's going to be the liaison with the business partners that knows how to bring that data to life and tell the stories in a compelling way to the businesses. So I'm actually, I don't think it's the number of employees you have that compel you to do it. It's just the where you are and where you want to be on the continuum that may indicate when you need to bring in additional FTE.
Great, and I think that brings us to the top of the hour or a little beyond. So again, thank you everybody for participating in our webinar today, and I hope you found it valuable, and we'd love to follow up with any resources or information that can help you move along your continuum. I'd like to thank you, Carrie, as well.
Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for participating today.